Welcome to another audio-only podcast. And these are designed if you're going for a walk, or maybe you're on the subway, or you're driving around town getting some chores done, and you don't want to be staring at a screen. I had one lady say on the comment section that she was playing a computer game while she was listening to this, and I thought, perfect. That's exactly what the intention of this is. We don't always want to be staring at a computer screen. So if you're doing housework and you got the headphones on, wonderful. I'm happy to spend a half hour or so with you talking shop here about print on demand. And in this audio only podcast, I'm going to be talking about myths and lies. And really, this started from the occasional comment that I get on the YouTube channel. People will comment in various videos, and the question is some variation of the following. It says, "Hey Zen, I don't have a computer. I don't have time to dedicate this because I'm working 2 jobs and I've got 18 kids, and I don't have any technical skill whatsoever. Can I make $1,000 a month on print on demand?" And it's like, I guess you could. I mean, you could also be walking through the park and find a suitcase full of dollar bills. I guess anything's possible, but it's highly unlikely. Now, I don't want to be Mr. Discouraging here and crush somebody's dreams. I know that everyone's got different backgrounds, different skill sets, but I want to also be honest about what it takes to succeed in any business. It doesn't have to be print on demand. It can be any business. So imagine, for example, if you extrapolated that question out into another industry. So for example, imagine if you were a restaurateur and you had a restaurant going, and you ran into somebody who said, "Hey, I'd love to run a restaurant. Now, I don't know how to hire staff. I can't cook. I have no money to open up an actual physical location, and I don't understand how food works. So could I open up a restaurant and make enough money to sustain myself?" And it's like, well, no, probably not, right? I mean, you'd have to get some sort of skill set, and you'd have to get some sort of meager investment, either investing in some sort of technology or take the time to invest in a skill. So I want to talk a little bit about that in this podcast. And really what it comes down to is an investment in some sort of hardware, an investment in some sort of time, and an investment in some sort of energy. In other words, what we call sometimes massive will, the will to succeed. And what this is really a push in your life to make major change. So an example of this, not to sound overly dramatic, but an example of this would be taking a week or 2 or 3 in the evenings, and instead of playing Angry Birds, you would learn how to use Photoshop. You'd watch some videos online, you'd watch some Photoshop tutorials, you'd actually spend 5 or 6 or 7 hours working in Photoshop, making absolutely horrible designs. And that's I don't want to gloss over that, because that's the part where the wheels fall off and people pull the chute and they jump out and they go, "I don't want to do this anymore." By about hour 6, when you're working in a software program that you don't know, it's really frustrating because you're not seeing any results. So there's this mentality that I've adopted, and I know a lot of successful people have adopted, and the idea is it's called failing forward. The idea is that you do bad designs on purpose. You try something new on purpose, knowing it's not going to succeed. Now, if it does, it's a happy accident. But chances are very high you're going to crank out 20 or 30 absolutely embarrassingly bad designs. And that's okay, because you need to work through that in order to get the skill set to succeed. So I'm just using Photoshop as an example. It could be Inkscape, it could be Microsoft Word. If you're learning another language, for example, maybe you're doing business writing, whatever it is, you want to get successful by being bad at something for a little while. So I'll give you a quick example. I got a laser cutter machine. It's like a laser engraving machine. It's called the X tool. It's really cool. And I'm learning how to use it. So I admit I'm not a full-on expert. I haven't been using it for 10 years, but it's really fun. And I'm making a lot of really bad designs, and I'm screwing up left, right, and center, and I'm loving it. It doesn't bother me. I haven't burned the house down yet, so I know it's because this laser beam is shooting out into all different angles, engraving things and cutting wood, and I'm thinking, okay, either I lose a finger, which would be, I can obviously go to the hospital. So far, it hasn't happened. I got the sunglasses on, I'm looking at this laser beam, and I'm learning lots. I'm learning by actually trying new things And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So that's just an example of where I'm trying to increase my skill set in something that admittedly I'm not really a big expert in. Now, in terms of hardware, I do want to point out, and I'm only going based on my experience, so I don't want to sit here and poo-poo on somebody who's using a cell phone in order to do print on demand. I know there are lots of people that use apps, and there's iPads and cell phones and that sort of thing. I do want to point out, I can only relay my experience. And so when I say I recommend that you have a computer, and I recommend you have a laptop or a desktop and it's got 8 gigabytes of RAM or 16 gigabytes of RAM, whatever it is, I'm going off of my recommendation. But I'm certainly not trying to say that you can't have another path to success. That's certainly not what I'm saying at all. So I sometimes get this in the comments as well, where somebody will say, it's always the same kind of person where they say, hey, like you can tell like they're kind of setting you up, like they want to catch you in like a fib or a lie. And they go, well, what computer would you recommend? I'm using a cell phone only. And I go, well, I mean, if you're asking me my opinion, I recommend a laptop with 16 gigabytes using Windows and Photoshop or Affinity Photo because that's what I'm using. And then they typically will reply with, well, I'm not using that. I've used a phone for years and I've had great success. And I'm thinking, well, then why are you asking me? Like, I fully admit I'm not using a phone. I'm not using a laptop or an iPad to make designs. I'm using a laptop. I'm using a quote unquote proper computer. And I don't want to sound like a snob here, but if you're asking me my opinion on my YouTube channel, what I'm using to make $1,000 or $2,000 a month on print on demand, then I would recommend a laptop because that's what I've been using for years. I'm comfortable with Photoshop and Affinity Photo and Inkscape and that kind of thing. I do want to point out as well, another way that you can kind of supercharge your print on demand journey, and I recommend this is my personal opinion, is using software solutions or website solutions such as Creative Fabrica, Vexels. If you're doing low content books, there's a great software solution called BookBolt that I highly recommend. I've been using them and I love it. So I'm only recommending things that I use. And in this case, I find that you can get hours and days and weeks worth of time done very, very quickly. So for example, using BookBolt, I can make a book, low content book, in about 20 minutes. That would normally take me like 3 hours. So to me, in one evening, I could make like 10 books. Well, that's a huge value add for the $7 a month or $8 a month it costs to use BookBolt. It's like, well, that's a no-brainer to me, right? For $8, I can sacrifice one hamburger a month and I can have basically 10 books a night publishing on Amazon KDP. So I know sometimes people say, well, I can't afford the $10 a month or I can't afford the $20 a month. Fair enough. I'm certainly not going to sit here in judgment on someone's life. But I also want to point out, in some cases, I would argue you can't afford to not use it because if you're spending 3 or 4 or 5 hours creating 1 or 2 print-on-demand designs, that's simply not going to get you to where you want to be success-wise. And I've had that comment as well on the YouTube channel where people say, I'm a real artist, I do oil paintings, I buy a canvas, I buy oil paint, it takes me 3 days to make one design, then I take a picture of it and I put it on a t-shirt. And it's like, well, this may not be the best fit for you because you're going to create maybe 80 designs a year. And it's like, there's no guarantee you're going to sell any of them. So, I can create 80 designs in a weekend. And there's not me bragging. It's just, I've just got a different skill set, right? I'm using Photoshop and Affinity Photo, and I'm also using pre-purchased design templates on Creative Fabrica and Vexels, for example. And I can crank out 80 while I'm watching a football game on a Sunday. So I'm just saying it's maybe not the best medium. You might be better off selling original artwork, going to art galleries. You may want to try to align your skill set with where you're selling your artwork. I want to talk next about competition. In the print-on-demand world, you're going to see a lot of, I have to laugh because I do watch other people's YouTube videos, and there's a guy on YouTube who talks about greedy gurus. He uses that terminology a lot. He says, when the greedy YouTube gurus, and I don't know who these greedy gurus are, but I love that phrase. So I hope you guys don't think I'm a greedy guru. I'm hoping that everybody has success on print on demand, and I'm hoping everybody has success in their life where they're able to get a side hustle with a bunch of money on the side. So in that sense, yes, I'm greedy for you. Of course, I'd love to make money as well. So anyway, the greedy gurus will often say things like, upload one design and make $5,000. And it's like, well, it's possible. Like, I'll use myself as an example, right? I created a design. I've got a registered copyright on it. And I sell between 20 and 30 designs, that particular design or a variant of that design every day on multiple platforms. And so it's great. I make like $50 a day on this one design every day. And I've done this for like 4 years. Now, that's rare. Like, I'm certainly not saying that's normal. I'm starting to build out my portfolio where I've got other designs I'm registering the copyrights on, and I'm hoping to replicate that success for where I can make maybe $500 a day on these designs. But it's not normal, right? Out of my 5 or 6 or 10,000 designs I've got up online, I might have 10 that are in that sort of top tier where I'm able to make consistent sales every single day of those designs. So again, I've worked really hard over the years to niche market and try to get good at this stuff. So I don't want to say you can't hit a home run right out of the gates. You could, but it's certainly rare. Now, one of the biggest complaint that I get on the YouTube channel, Zen Watercooler YouTube channel or Crafty Stacks, shameless plug alert. One of the things that I get when people are commenting is they'll say things like, everything is so competitive. There's so many keywords. There's so much competition. I can't make any sales. And I agree, it is super competitive. I'm not going to argue that. So I guess I separate myself from the quote unquote greedy gurus who say that you upload one design and you can retire from your job. And I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is there are a lot of crappy designs online. So yes, there's a ton of designs. There's a ton of competition. However, there's this thing called the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule, if you want to look that up online. It's called the Pareto principle. And basically what it says is most of the output is derived from a little tiny bit of the input. So in other words, the 80-20 rule, an example would be 80% of your problems at work are caused by 20% of your customers, your employees, your systems that you're running, whatever it is. So you can just extrapolate this out to print on demand pretty easily. And you can say, okay, probably 80% of your sales are going to come from 20% of your designs. I actually think it's more of a 95-5 rule when it comes to print on demand. So for me, 95% of my sales come from about 5% of my designs. So you got to think this through, right? If I have 10,000 designs up on multiple platforms all over the world, that means that most of my income is coming from 500 designs out of the 10,000. So that means 9,500 designs that I've uploaded are not doing anything. Never sold one. Maybe I've sold one a year. I might get one random sale once in a while. But the other 500, that's what's driving my quote-unquote business forward. So I want to just put that in perspective a little bit, because I think what happens is someone who's new to print on demand, they upload 50 designs, and then they go, well, I'm not making a bunch of sales. This is dumb. And it's like, right. Well, but using the 95-5 rule, 50 designs, you might have one design that would sell. So you might get one sale a week on that one design. So it's like you got to upload a lot of designs, and they typically need to be higher than average quality. So imagine a scale of 0 being absolute garbage, 100 being the Sistine Chapel, oh my goodness, it's the greatest thing on earth. Well, you want to be like above 50. You be in the 60s, in the 70s, and the 80s, so that when you're uploading these designs, you at least have a fighting chance that someone who's scanning through the thumbnails on Merch by Amazon or TeePublic or Redbubble, they're going to see your thumbnail and they're going to go, wow, that's worth a second look. That looks really good. The colors are good. The fonts are good. The placement's good. And I find for myself, when I look through Redbubble, almost all of the designs to me are horrific. They're awful. Now, the top designs typically will look decent. And I have to laugh when people comment on the channel, and I'm not laughing at them. I'm laughing at the absurdity of it, because people will say, it's impossible to break into the top page in Redbubble. And it's like, but I've done it repeatedly for years. Like, I'll literally have just done it, and then I see a YouTube comment saying it's impossible. So it's like, well, it's not impossible. You need to have proper tags in your designs, like keywords. Those are really important. That's probably the most important thing to get noticed in Redbubble and search in general is keywords. And it's really boring to do, so a lot of people overlook it. You see some designs that have 3 keywords. It's like, well, who's going to find this design? 50 keywords is probably better. Now, there's a huge debate over how many keywords you're supposed to use, 10, 15, 50. All I can say is have as many relevant keywords as you need. I would certainly recommend like over 15 and try to get 20, 25 keywords in there. And that means when people are searching, it'll pop up. I do agree. There's a huge amount of competition online. Another thing is low content books. There's all sorts of YouTube videos where people are saying, don't do low content books because it's too competitive, you'll never sell anything. It's not been my experience at all. I've personally found that I've uploaded low content books for years, and you make a decent looking book in a really good niche and you're going to make some sales. Now, am I going to be quitting my job tomorrow because of it? No, but I'm making at least $5, $10, $15 a day selling Amazon KDP books. Well, I mean, that's not chump change. Like over the course of a month, that's like $300, $400, $800, over the Christmas season. That's pretty good money. So that's the other myth I wanted to talk about as well, is people will say, you can't really make any money on print on demand. And it's like, well, but I'm living proof that you can. So it's very hard for me to not kind of turn argumentative when this happens. And it's not just me. I've gone onto a Reddit thread. There's this thing called Reddit. If you ever want to waste 6 hours of your life, go onto Reddit and start looking things up. It's basically a big bulletin board where people can post different things. Well, there's print on demand threads in Reddit. And people will post their earnings in Reddit. So there's a couple guys that are on Merch by Amazon, and one guy had $4,500 last month in Merch by Amazon sales. He's got the sales right there. He takes a screenshot and he puts it up. Well, I don't make $4,500 on Merch by Amazon. Not that much. But that I'd love to someday. But I'm certainly not going to say it's impossible, because here's a guy that's done it. I've seen TeePublic earnings $800 a month, $700 a month. I know for Redbubble, I've made $200 in a month, $300 in a month. I've seen $600 in a month. Displate, I've seen people make well over $1,000 a month. I'm living proof of that. I mean, I regularly make more than $1,000 a month on Displate. I mean, I think my best month on Displate, I think I made $4,800 US a few years ago before the pandemic. And I think a couple months ago, I made $3,500. So, I mean, you can certainly make money on this. I've been publishing on Amazon KDP for years. And I regularly get $200, $300. There's people that sell stock photography. They sell it on iStock Photo. Adobe's got stock photo website. So you can go, Getty Images is another one. And there's people that regularly make $150 every 3 months or $300 every 3 months. There's all sorts of things out there that you can do to make money. So when you hear people saying it's impossible, I'm not trying to be pie in the sky and say anything's possible and you can be the president and you can go to the moon. It's like, well, you probably can't. But this isn't really the same as saying I'm going to play in the NBA. Like, this isn't like me going up to a little short 8-year-old and saying, you can play in the NBA. Chances are you're not going to play in the NBA. Sorry, kid. Sorry to crush your dreams. But making like $200 a month in print on demand is not the same as playing in the professional major league sports. This is not hard. And I'm not trying to diminish it, but you just need to have the bare bones in place. And really, I want to talk about that next as we land the plane here on the podcast. I've got some recommendations on what you can do in terms of how to set yourself up to succeed and bypass the negative Nellies out there that are saying that can't be done. So I want to be really honest. It is hard. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take, like last night, for example, I was watching a documentary on the TV, and I was just kind of mindlessly scanning through a museum website just looking for interesting images. Like, that's kind of the life of the print-on-demand guy. I'm watching a movie, and I'm listening, and it's a documentary, so it's not like I've got to pay close attention. It's not like a murder mystery where I'm going to miss something. It's like a basketball documentary. And I'm just scanning through my computer, looking at images, kind of just multitasking. I'll upload and I'll listen to some music, or I'll listen to a podcast, and I kind of spend an hour in the evenings decompressing, uploading images, uploading designs. It's kind of boring. So it's not glamorous work, but it does take time. It takes hundreds and hundreds of hours to get a portfolio where you've got 6,000, 8,000, 10,000 designs up online. And then that will get you to a place where you can sell $300 a month, $500 a month, whatever it is, whatever the number is. The number one thing that you can do to set yourself up to success is niche marketing. And I find that this is overlooked by 97% of the people that are doing print on demand. So what happens is you start making content. Could be low content books, could be t-shirts, could be fine art prints, what have you. Okay, whatever it is in the print on demand world, people like to make what they like to make. Instead, what they should be doing is you should be making what people want to buy. It's a completely different mindset. So if you love cats, I'm just using me as an example. Okay, I love cats. So I'd love to create cat designs all day long. But there's so much competition, I don't create a lot of cat designs. Now I do for myself. If you ever see some random guy who hasn't shaved in a couple of days walking around with a cat t-shirt on, it might be me. But chances are that I'm not selling a lot of cat t-shirts. So what I do instead is I do research. I do keyword research, and I find what people are searching for. And then I make those designs. Now, if you're not into keyword research, that's okay. Then what I'd recommend is upload onto, let's just use Redbubble as an example. Upload 300 designs onto Redbubble, different genres, all different genres. And then whatever sells, make more of that design. So you can do that as well. So there's really, you can do niche marketing where you're researching through keyword searches, or you can do niche marketing where you're just paying attention to what's selling. Because if something sells, chances are people want that design. It could be a one-off, but chances are people want that design. The other thing I would recommend as well is that you work to create some sort of a moat or some sort of a barrier around you. So I'm going to talk about that for a couple minutes here. So imagine that you're a castle, okay? And imagine a moat around the castle. So it's hard for people to invade your skill set, to invade your portfolio. Now, how do you build a moat around your portfolio? Well, there's a couple ways. One is that you join print-on-demand sites that are hard to get into. The harder it is, the more difficult it is to get into, the more it creates a moat, because that means not everybody is selling. So one of the things I don't like about Redbubble is that anybody with a pulse can join Redbubble and start uploading designs. Yeah, it's great if you're new and if you want to make a few bucks, but I don't invest thousands of hours into Redbubble because it's so competitive. What I do instead is I joined Merch by Amazon. Merch by Amazon rejects lots of people. So I worked really hard. I built up a really nice portfolio, and then I applied to Merch by Amazon, and they accepted me. So I get this question all the time. How do I get accepted into Merch by Amazon? The answer is have an absolutely wonderful portfolio that blows people out of the water so that you're undeniable, that when you apply, they must accept you. So have the absolute best designs sitting on a site like Behance, for example. That's just a free portfolio website you can go to. Just go to Behance you can just Google it, and you can upload your portfolio onto this website, and you can submit that portfolio to Merch by Amazon. That's what I did, and I got accepted. Now, I'm not the world's greatest person at Photoshop, but I consider myself above average. I've worked really hard over the years. I understand how to do lens flare and how to do photo manipulation. I understand how to make, I think, pretty cool looking pieces of artwork. So that is probably what got me accepted into Merch by Amazon. Now, I'll never know. Maybe I caught the guy on a day when he was fighting with his wife and all of a sudden he's clicking the random accept button and he's not paying attention. I have no idea. But I think that's what happened because I have a pretty nice looking portfolio. Same thing happened with Displate. When I applied to be on Displate, I had a Merch by Amazon account set up, I had a Redbubble account set up, and I had an Etsy shop at the time, and I had TeePublic set up. So I sent them all my links on when I sent to Displate. And I said, hey, I'd love to sell on Displate. And they accepted me. And since then, I've grown my portfolio on Displate to be huge. Displate doesn't accept a lot of artists. So I'd like to think I'm in the top 10%. Now, I do admit there's some pretty rinky-dink artists on Displate where I'm looking at their artwork going, Jesus, how did you ever get it approved? But for the most part, they have a lot of high-end artists on Displate. If your art skills are unique, That's another way that you can build a moat around yourself. I've seen people doing spray paint work on canvas. I've seen people with digital painting skills where they're super talented. It's easy for you to create that kind of design, but it's difficult for everyone else to create that type of design. That's a moat. So you're in the moat, you're inside the castle, and you're keeping other people out. I would recommend, if you're looking at a way that you can control the sales, set up an Etsy shop, for example. It's easier than setting up your own website, but it's more difficult than setting it up on Redbubble. So it's like the next level up. Redbubble's easiest. That's like bottom of the barrel. And then next level up in terms of difficulty would be Etsy. Up above that would be, say, Merch by Amazon and Displate. And then at the very top would be your own website. That takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of work, a lot of investment, a little bit of money. You might have to invest a couple $100 a year. So not a lot of people have their own website that they're selling print on demand on. So if you're looking at ways of differentiating yourselves and building a moat around your portfolio, this is the way to do it. Another way that you can differentiate yourself that has nothing to do with technical skill is your niches that you're in. So for example, you may be an expert in, let's just say you're an electrician, okay? Now I'm not an electrician, so I'm going to just extrapolate out here. Let's pretend that you're an electrician. There's all sorts of technical inside jokes, technical jargon. There's all sorts of language that electricians use that you could spend time and energy researching, but since I'm not an electrician, I'm not super passionate about it. So if you're, say, on Redbubble, you could have an electrician-based store, all sorts of funny puns, electricity-based humor, all sorts of inside jokes that most people aren't going to get. But if you've got Uncle Johnny who's the electrician, well, you can buy him a Christmas gift from this electrical store and you go, oh my goodness, he's going to love that. You know, an example would be like there's an electrical term called an ohm. And so you'd have like a yoga guy meditating, and he says the word ohm like a mantra, or ohm. And it's like kind of funny if you're an electrician. Well, if you're not an electrician, it means nothing to you. It's so niche that you can be an expert in it that other people can't be the expert in it. Another example, I'll just use me as an example. I like to think I'm a pretty funny guy. I study like stand-up comedy and humor, and I enjoy comedy writing. And so for me, I really enjoy funny designs. It's easy for me, due to a lifetime of research, to take standard information from a museum website and turn them into funny designs. So I've done this repeatedly, where I've seen a niche that's relatively small, I've just peppered it full of funny designs, and all of a sudden I'm making sales. So I'm not saying this is like easy. I'm saying it's a skill set that I've developed over the years that's unique to me. And if you're a funny person, you could do this too. So I hope you found this helpful. The idea with the myths and the lies is that, A, I want to make sure that you're taking inventory on what you have, regardless of what haters and negative people are going to say. I don't want to discount what they're saying because sometimes they're correct. When somebody goes online and they say, boy, print on demand is so competitive, I can't make any sales. From their perspective, they're absolutely correct. Print on demand is really competitive and they probably can't make any sales. I would just contest that a little bit. I would argue, ask yourself why you can't make any sales. Maybe you're not in the right niche. I could have spent the last 4 years working in funny cat designs and I would have made 0 sales. So I completely agree. I don't make funny cat designs. I make all sorts of weird, obscure, super niche things that I think 99% of the world's not going to like, but 1% of the world is really going to like. And that's where my sales come from. You know, I've been to the Yukon, for example. My mom used to live up in the Yukon, so I've been to the Yukon a few times. And the Yukon is like super cold and super beautiful. And there's all sorts of little towns in the Yukon that if you've never been to the Yukon, you'd never know these towns were there. Yeah, you could look at a map, but I've been to these towns. And so I've been to a town like Carcross, for example. And so having a t-shirt that says Carcross Yukon with an ice cream cone on it means nothing to anyone if you've never been to Carcross. But if you've been to Carcross, there's an ice cream stand there that's locally famous. So I've got Carcross, Yukon, ice cream cone. Well, somebody who's been to Carcross, they're going to cry tears of joy because they understand that's what Carcross means to them. It's this beautiful little ice cream stand in the middle of nowhere. That's so niche. You got to think in your life, what is it that you know that other people don't know? What skill sets do you have that other people don't have? If you can unlock that mystery, you can be successful in print on demand. I'm living proof of it. I really hope you found this helpful. I believe in you. It does take time, energy, and work, but I know that you can do it. Take care, everybody. I really hope you have a great day. Thanks a lot for listening.